Good evening. I would like to call today's meeting, October the 15th, the Little Rock City Board of Directors meeting. We would like to welcome those that are in attendance and those that are watching online. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Director Richardson. Here. Director Hendricks. Director Webb. Here. Director Pack. Here. Director Hines. Director Wright. Director Campuris. Director Fortson. Here. Director Adcock. Vice Mayor Wyrick. Mayor Scott.
Present. Director Hines, if you would, please give the invocation.
Thank you. Please bow your heads. Dear Lord, thank you for letting us come here together tonight to handle the business of the citizens of Little Rock. Please put your hand on us and let us seek your will in all that we do this evening. Please watch over our first responders and all of our city employees that are out working in the days and weeks to come. Please watch over us as we go into the holiday season. In your son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. May all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll now move into our City Beautiful Landscape Awards. Mr. Steve Holmeyer, if you would.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, Board of Directors, again, for allowing us to present these landscape awards. This is our 40th annual landscape award competition of the Little Rock City Beautiful Commission. The nominated landscape development must be in place for 1 year and have demonstrated excellent design, implementation, and continual maintenance, including voluntary upgrades or enhancement that have gone beyond the city requirements. Previous winners are not eligible again for 5 years. And again, it was a tough decision. We viewed 20-something nominations and narrowed it down to these three. There's not first, second, and third. They're all equal, and we'll go ahead and present them in order here. The first one is Curran Hall, which is the Little Rock City Visitor Center. And we have Patricia Blick, and I think some Master Gardeners here. Patricia?
Thank you. If I could acknowledge just a couple of folks who are here with me tonight. I have Faith Morrison. She is our team leader, one of our team leaders for our Master Gardeners. And I also have Ashley Ahrens. She's the president of the QQA board. Thank you very much for the recognition. And I'd like to say thank you to the Master Gardeners for all their work.
We've got a rose for the City Roses. We have a yard sign you can take and put in your yard for display. Our plaques didn't come in yet, but we will bring those to your businesses and give those to you. So
Thank you.
We really
Thank you
appreciate it.
Thank you very much so much.
Next one, Director Wright, is Broward Animal Hospital. You did?
Yeah, I've been standing all the time. Irma,
Come on.
you told me early this morning, and early today. So what are you doing? You're in flowers, right?
I messed up.
Yeah, he saw me early today. I guess he forgot. Come on, do what you're supposed to do.
Yes, I'm sorry.
So, Patricia, why don't you come back up and let them all take a picture with Director Hendricks?
Come on.
I think my other counterparts have left, but I would love to.
Hold on, we'll have you hold your sign.
Oh, let me get my sign.
Okay.
Thank you.
What, do you want me to hold it? What?
Sure. I don't know who's doing the photo.
Over
Oh,
here.
here we go. Thank you. Thank you.
You're too young to be forgetting.
I'm sorry. Okay, she'll never let me over that one. Okay, Briarwood Animal Hospital, Dr. Bob Hale, and Director Wright. Bob, if you'd like to say anything.
I'd just like to say thank you for the recognition. I know we've taken a lot of pride at our hospital on Canis Road. And I'm also looking forward to when we get the Canis Road expansion, and that way the two will go together and they'll both look beautiful. My clients appreciate it. I'll make sure it's on my Facebook page. Thank you.
I can assure Dr. Hill that it is on that list of the projects that will be done in the next round. Okay?
Excellent. A rose for me.
And you and I will do this. Congratulations.
Let me give this to you.
You
Thank
make
you.
me look good.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, the third one, Director Webb. And this is for Taekwondo World Headquarters down on Riverfront Drive. Beautiful building, beautiful landscaping. Linus Raines is here from the World Headquarters to accept the award.
Just want to say thank you so much for this recognition. The landscaping was strategically designed to tie in everything to do with Taekwondo, from the pine tree that was specifically targeted in a special location, establishing roots and building a strong foundation, to the sculptures, the 3 sculpture statues with the master teaching his students, and to finally to the water feature that flows from outside to inside the museum, which signified a flowing of the education to the masters, to the students, and the instructors. And I'm sorry, I have a cold. Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you recipients for being able to attend and accept your awards tonight. Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Board of Directors for allowing us to do this again. Thank Tipton Hurst for donating the roses, as they've always done. Thank you.
As we proceed, for tonight's agenda, we do have a modification. Prior to making a motion for modification of M1, I do want to stress with the board, we've been going back and forth on how we make this decision. And I know the board just recently received, earlier this morning, the recommendation. I want you to be able to really take time to, excuse me, I was running, apologize. Take time to ascertain the recommendation over the next couple of weeks. And so when we're asking for the board is to add this to the agenda. We will discuss it, not take action on it, and then recess this meeting and discuss it at our next board meeting, which is actually, because we don't have one next Tuesday, will be 2 weeks from now. That's the motion. Second. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes to add M1. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read the consent agenda.
The consent agenda consists of a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with FTN Associates LTD in an amount not to exceed $212,000 to provide engineering services for the construction of Cell 5 west of the Little Rock landfill, and for the purposes, a resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with James A. Rogers Excavating Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $4,440,575.23 for the City of Little Rock Class 1 Landfill Cell West 5 construction, and for the purposes, a resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with River City Hydraulics in the amount of $2,172,720 for the purchase of 8 Freightliner model M2 106 refuse trucks for the Public Works Department, and for the purposes, A resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with DJ Red and Iron and Aggregates Ltd. in amount not to exceed $133,296 for the North Lookout Road Sidewalk Replacement Program and for the purposes funding from the 2012 3/8 capital improvement sales tax and the 2013 limited tax general obligation capital improvement bonds. A resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Redstone Construction Group Incorporated in amount not to exceed $226,779.60 for Spring Valley Drainage Phase 2 and for the purposes funding from the 2012 3/8 capital improvement sales tax and the 2013 limited tax general obligation capital improvement bonds. A resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Positive Resolutions Lawn Service Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $123,984 for the Maryland Avenue Reconstruction Project and for the purposes funding from the 2012 3/8 capital improvement sales tax and the 2013 limited tax general obligation capital improvement bonds. A resolution to transfer title to Brittany Hobbs via quitclaim deed for property sold by the city of Little Rock, Arkansas to be used for neighborhood revitalization programs and for the purposes. A resolution to transfer title to Springer and Springer LLC via quitclaim deed for property sold by the city of Little Rock, Arkansas to be used for neighborhood revitalization programs and for the purposes. A resolution to transfer title to Toya Smith via quitclaim deed for property sold by the city of Little Rock, Arkansas to be used for neighborhood revitalization programs and for the purposes. A resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with North America Fire Equipment Company Incorporated for the total amount of $181,670.02 for the purchase of firefighting protective coats and pants for the Little Rock Fire Department and for the purposes. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Drager Safety Incorporated for the amount of $87,000 for the purchase of a mobile SCBA maze training gallery for the Little Rock Fire Department and for the purposes. A resolution authorized the mayor to execute a lease agreement between the city of Little Rock, Arkansas and Women and Children First, the Center Against Family Violence, within park property located in the Southwest Community Park and for the purposes. That concludes the consent agenda.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Director Hendricks.
Would you have Mr. Moore to explain to my constituents the meaning of the neighborhood revitalization program? Would Mr. Moore explain that for my constituents?
Yes, ma'am.
Director Hendricks, are you referring to the land bank?
On 7, 8, and 9, the property being used for a neighborhood revitalization. Explain that to the public.
As the board is aware, the city over the last number of years has acquired property for our land bank. It actually came out of a NUSA trip. I can't remember where you all were. I think Michigan maybe. So we created a land bank and we've acquired property over the years. And the whole concept is to acquire the property, clear the title, and then get it back into people who want to put it on the property tax rolls. And that's what these 3 resolutions do.
Thank you, Ms. Moore.
So all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Madam Clerk, would you please read the rest of the grouped items for the first time?
An ordinance to amend the land use plan in the Stagecoach Road Planning District, 10,101 Stagecoach Road for neighborhood commercial to commercial and for the purposes. An ordinance to reclassify property located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas and for the purposes. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,576 of April the 3rd, 2018 to remove a residential property from the list to condemn certain structures in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas as structural fire and health hazards, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove said structure, to declare an emergency and for the purposes. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,749 of July the 18th, 2019 to remove a residential property from the list to condemn certain structures in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas as structural fire and health hazards, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to remove said structure, to declare an emergency and for the purposes. An ordinance to establish the rate of taxation of property for the city of Little Rock, Arkansas to be collected the year in the year 2020 for various funds of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to declare an emergency and for other purposes. An ordinance to amend the portion of the provisions of Chapter 18, Article 2, offenses involving public peace and noises prohibited generally, Section 18-52B of the Revised Code of Ordinances of 1988 of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to declare an emergency and for the purposes. First reading.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Second reading.
An ordinance to amend the land use plan in the Stagecoach Road Planning District, 10,101 Stagecoach Road, from neighborhood commercial to commercial. An ordinance to reclassify property located in the City of Little Rock, Arkansas. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,576, to remove a residential property from the list, to condemn certain structures in the City of Little Rock, Arkansas as structural fire and health hazards, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove said structure, to declare an emergency. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,749, to remove a residential property from the list, to condemn certain structures in the City of Little Rock, Arkansas with structural fire and health hazards, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to remove said structure, to declare an emergency. An ordinance to establish the rate of taxation of property for the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to be collected in the year 2020 for various funds of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to declare an emergency. An ordinance to amend a portion of the provision of Chapter 18, Article 2, offenses involving public peace and noises prohibited generally, Section 18-52B of the Revised Code of Ordinances of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to declare an emergency. Second reading.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Third reading.
An ordinance to amend the land use plan in the Stagecoach Road Planning District, 10,101 Stagecoach Road, from neighborhood commercial to commercial. An ordinance to reclassify property located in the City of Little Rock, Arkansas. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,576, to remove a residential property from the list, to condemn certain structures in the City of Little Rock, Arkansas with structural fire and health hazards, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to remaze and remove said structure, declare an emergency. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 21,749, to remove a residential property from the list, to condemn certain structures in the City of Little Rock, Arkansas as structural fire and health hazards, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove said structure, to declare an emergency. An ordinance to establish the rate of taxation of property for the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to be collected in the year 2020 for various funds of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to declare an emergency. An ordinance to amend a portion of the provision of Chapter 18, Article 2, offenses involving public peace and noises prohibited generally, Section 18-52B of the Revised Code of Ordinances of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to declare an emergency. Third and final reading.
Now that we've had three readings, are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Motion passes. Madam Clerk, would you please read the emergency clause? All those in favor of emergency clause for 15, 16, 17, and 18, in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. We have emergency clause passed for 15, 16, 17, and 18. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read item 19 for the first time.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Bennett Davis Group, revised short form POD, located at 1300 North Shackelford Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. First reading.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Second reading.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Bennett Davis Group, revised short form POD, located at 1300 North Shackelford Road. Second reading.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Third reading.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Bennett Davis Group, revised short form POD, located at 1300 North Shackelford Road. Third and final reading.
Now that we've had three readings for this particular ordinance, we'll start with our agenda item cards. Mr. Robert Walker.
Thank you. This is for
our dance club to become an event center, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Robert Walker. I'm a member of your City Beautiful Commission. I specifically asked the city attorney assigned to us on the City Beautiful Commission if it was all right to come ask you as a personal favor that you grant this. I'll dance tomorrow, and it will help the finances of the club to be an event center. We're going to be very careful of our dance floor. We build it ourselves. Are there any questions?
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Walker. Mr. Gray?
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk to y'all.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gray.
I'm a 25-year veteran of the military and have 28 years retired law enforcement. One of our loves in our life is dancing, ballroom dancing, swing dancing. To have a place like we have out there right now, the work that's gone into it, turning it from an abandoned church into, I think, probably a 4,000 square foot dance floor where we have some of the best people come in from everywhere to dance there. It's not a honky-tonk. It is a classy dance facility. I've helped work on it on my own time. I represent the elder part of this, and I always say all my dance friends are beautiful, but we have all ages as an opportunity for Little Rock to actually shine, for people to come into this city. And I live in Bryant now. Was born and grew up in Little Rock. But it's an opportunity for us to have a place that's not loud, not boisterous. It is just a bunch of beautiful people that love to dance. And I thank you, and I'd appreciate you voting for this for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bennett. And I do want to definitely never want anyone to yield their time, but due to the fact that all the agenda cards are all for this particular amendment, we may be able to get to the vote quicker if you guys will want to consider that. But just I think you'll be okay.
Would it be okay if I finish?
Sure. You would like to finish? Your name?
I mean, are you okay for anybody else to speak?
What's your name?
I'm Mike Bennett.
You're actually next up.
Okay, so I'm next up.
All right.
Well, all right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and city directors. Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I've got a very unique situation. A little history about me. I moved here in 1987. I'm a graduate from Wichita State University, grew up in Wichita, Kansas, and moved here to be closer to family and two younger siblings. I have a degree in graphic design and learned printing, and I moved here with the goal of becoming a successful businessman, starting my own business, and I'm on my way to doing that after about 32 years. I've had numerous opportunities to move other places for other jobs. I've had numerous, and I love this city, and I've chosen to stay in this city, and this city is my home. I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere else. I mentioned that to say I've got a lot invested in this community, and the building that I purchased, I was very blessed to be able to buy the building at 1300 North Shackelford Road about 3 years ago. And I bought it for a variety of reasons. When I moved here in '87, I lived in the neighborhood just a few blocks away, in Director Peck's Ward 4. So I would drive past this building daily. I started attending church at the Bible Church of Little Rock, which is right there at Breckenridge and where 430 crosses over. And when I would go to church on Sunday mornings, I would drive past this building. And it started as a church building. The church disbanded at some point. It turned into a daycare, Lambsfold Daycare. and there was great activity going on in the building at that time until a very unfortunate accident where they lost a student on a field trip. A little child drowned, so they ended up closing that facility. Then it became home to another ministry for trafficked women and children. They ran into some zoning issues as far as what they wanted to do with the building, so it sat vacant for a number of years. And as I would drive past it, either going to church, to my parents, or to work, and again, this is multiple times a day, I saw the building becoming, it just became very degraded. It was vacant, and I saw a for sale sign one day. And that was about 6 years ago. So I went and looked at it and decided it wasn't the time to buy it. Waited 3 more years, it got worse. And so at this point, we needed more space, so I purchased the building from the ministry. At the time I purchased it, the roof was leaking so badly that there were 55-gallon trash cans in the sanctuary area that were catching rainwater. We had to remove a host of wildlife in the area, rats and squirrels and raccoons, and we've put a lot of time and energy into developing it. And we've actually turned that building into, I believe, a showplace for the community. Shortly thereafter, I was approached by these wonderful people who you've heard a couple speak, and if we would have had time, I would have let every one of them speak. They're incredible people. They approached me as they lost their lease on 12th Street due to the people they were leasing had sold their building. So they were looking for a new home. And it just so happened that our building had the right amount of space in the former sanctuary, which is where I had all my printing equipment. And we talked for a bit, and we came up with a deal and said, yeah, this would be a great place for you. Why don't we come up with a lease agreement? So we worked that out. They put in about $40,000 of competition-level ballroom dance floor for their 3 clubs. Their 3 clubs have been in existence for 25-plus years. Very, very solid people. Once they started hosting their events, which are weekly, people started seeing this dance floor of the building, and they said, you know what, we'd love to have a birthday party. We'd love to host a wedding reception. How could that work? And we were excited about that until we realized, you know, we probably need to talk to Mr. Carney, City Planning Commission, and then we ultimately knew we'd get to you to get that officially zoned to allow us to have a small portion of our building that would allow those types of functions. And that's what brings me here today. I gave you a little bit of history because I'm not just a businessman looking to turn a quick dollar. My printing business is still located in this very building we're talking about. I've got 32 years, gosh, I'm getting old, 32 years outside of college invested in a business that if I screw up anything in this community, I've lost a tremendous amount of value. I've really damaged myself. So I'm coming before you, I know, to answer some questions. I know we've had, I think there's been a few neighbors that have actually written one letter, I think a couple of quick notes that they were in opposition. I've met with the first gentleman that I found out who had complaints. I actually called him, and he actually came over and we sat down and talked. We've hosted an open house for the neighborhood. We've got a very unique situation, the fact that one of the larger fire stations in the community is right next door. And so I've spoken with the fire department and said, are we being good neighbors? How have we done? Because we've been hosting these Wednesday night, Friday night events for the last year. And the only way anybody knew they were going on is when I had to send out that letter to 200 people within 200 feet of my property line. And that's what kind of started the discussions. So my hope is this, that I can answer any questions you have, that I can let you see and understand the kind of people I'm working with, the kind of person I am, and I hope that we can get this passed so that we can actually be a benefit and an asset to the community. So I would be open to any questions you may have, or if you're all ready to vote yes, I'm ready for that as well.
I believe we just have one question from City Director Adcock.
You said you want to host birthday parties and weddings, and I don't think anyone objects to those, but, you know, we have a history of having some special event centers that are wild. They bring in lots of alcohol. They bring in lots of driving late at night and everything. And I think I noticed that you wanted 12 o'clock.
Originally, yeah, and that was naivety on my part. When Dana Carney asked me to fill out the form, I said, you know, well, what's some good hours? 7 to midnight, 7 days a week. Well, I've actually since then talked to the Planning Commission, city staff about that, and we do not plan to do that. What we've proposed is we would have hours. I'm there all day long anyway. So we could actually start at 8 in the morning, and on weeknights, we're thinking we end at 11 o'clock.
Okay.
And then on Friday, Saturday nights, we would go till midnight.
All right, Director Richardson?
I'm sorry, I'm not completed.
Oh, I'm sorry, Director Eck, I apologize.
I think that's one of the problems. Midnight, when you're that close to a neighborhood, I would like to have seen maybe that 11 o'clock be all the time.
I've actually prepared a map. Would I be able to hand something to each of you? Would that be okay?
We like to get things.
If you just give it to, if you just let the Director pass it.
I know proximity to neighborhood has been brought up a number of times, and I understand why, is because when you say the word event center, it does conjure up what you've just described. We're not a typical event center. We do not plan to be. We've put a tremendous amount of, I just mentioned $40,000 of competition level ballroom dance floor. As a side note to that, I actually receive phone calls from people out of state that are asking about the events that they host on Wednesday and Friday to find out what times, so they can plan their trips through Little Rock to their destination to spend time with these people. So that's not a typical event center type event. A lot of them, I was asked by Mr. Carney about ticketed events, and we will not allow ticketed events to happen in our facility where it's just a concert or whatever concert that may be where people have to buy to come in. We're looking at very controlled. We're very we've already developed our contracts. We're very picky about who we will let into the facility.
See, my problem is that someday you may not be there, and this property is a special event center, and somebody else comes in that allows all these things that you won't allow.
Right.
So unless these restrictions are in your application, they don't follow the property. So I think that's my problem is I come from Southwest Little Rock.
Right.
And we have some out there that the owners who was nice people
Right.
left, and now we're having something that we don't want in our neighborhoods.
Right.
So although you're probably a great man, and I know lots of the people that does the dancing at your studio,
Right.
but what I'm looking at is when you're gone, then we are left with a event center in a community that is got housing in it.
I understand. I really do. I'll point out this map I just handed out that'll actually show you distances from neighbors. Our closest neighbor, again, is the fire station. If you'll look at that page 1, you'll see right at the top, I've actually done measurements. We're 87 feet 4 inches from the edge of my building to their bedroom windows. And again, we host these dances on Wednesday nights and Friday nights now. And if you step into the ballroom, the music is very loud. Once you step outside, you can't hear it. Our building happens to be made, it's a solid steel structure, has 6-inch concrete formed walls, which are highly insulated. That doesn't count all the insulation, sheetrock, and building materials on the inside. But our building it's a very unique building, and it's very well insulated. In addition to that, we actually set down lower than the typical grade. So again, my biggest concern was the city of employees and the firemen who are there all the time. And so I've been over there multiple times, just double checking. Are we still being good neighbors? Their comment to me is, Mike, we don't know you're there unless we happen to look out and see cars. That's when we know you're there. If you're concerned about traffic noise, I did traffic studies and found out that there are over 9,000 cars a day that go past our building. 9,000 a day. My parking lot will hold 75. If I let a little overflow, it may hold 95. That is negligible. If I were to have that parking lot full daily, which it won't be, I don't envision us having really anything going on Sunday night through Tuesday night. We have the one event Wednesday night, nothing Thursday night, maybe something on Friday and Saturday. We do have Fridays. So traffic count is not going to be a problem. And I've even talked to my neighbors and said, I'm willing to put exit signs on my drive that say left turn only, which takes them to the Rodney Parham corridor. A third of the mile up is where they're just building that premier gastroenterology clinic. They're putting $35 million into that facility, and that's going to increase traffic far more than this will.
Now, on your no events, ticketed events,
Right.
is that in your application?
It is.
And is the 8 to 11 in your application?
It is.
Okay, and what other restrictions are in your application?
Well, we do have the restriction that if alcohol is brought in, I do not have a liquor license. I'm not applying for a liquor license. I do not plan to get a liquor license to sell liquor, alcohol. But if there is a wedding reception and they bring it in, we require that there is a security guard on site to monitor and control that.
Is that a security guard or a Little Rock police officer?
We've talked to a few police officers, and we've also talked to companies who are specifically set up to handle security.
Mm-hmm. So it has to be a qualified or certified
Security guard.
security person?
Right.
Okay, and so other restrictions?
No, not that I can think of, but I'm willing to think of any. If you have any, I'd like to discuss it. I'll tell you one thing that we have been, I really do think this group and I have gone above board and happy to go further, is we would love to continue the discussion or have the discussion, answer any questions. You know, the open house, I did have concerned neighbors, so they came in and met me and saw what we were doing. So if you have other thoughts, I'm very willing and very open to discuss those with you. I want to be the best neighbor that neighborhood has.
And we appreciate that, and we want to continue on. You have more questions, Director Adcock?
No, I think that answers all my questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Director Adcock. Director Richardson is next, and then Director Hendricks.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the conceptual framework, including access and availability of alcohol, was explained to us last week. I move to call the question.
There's a motion.
Second. Director Hendricks says
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
aye.
Ayes have it on the call to question. We've now heard 3 readings for this particular motion. And since we've now had those 3 readings and all the questions that have been heard, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Director Hendricks, you wanted to make a comment?
You know, I came down here for Muskie and others, and I would love for Muskie to say something.
Well, Muskie yielded his time. He
Yielded his
did.
time?
He yielded his time.
All right, okay.
Muskie, would you stand, please? Wave to everybody. You're in support. All right. All right. Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 20? No.
It says executive
But
session.
we added the M1. M1 is going to be 20. Yeah. Yeah, M1.
A resolution to authorize an agreement with United Healthcare in an amount not to exceed $15 million to provide health care insurance for City of Little Rock employees and retirees for a period beginning January 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2020, and for the purposes.
As I shared earlier today, we'll continue on. We won't vote today. All those in favor of a motion to do at item 20. Is there a motion for a second reading? Oh, that's right. You're right. All right. Well, we'll have the discussion. I apologize. Director Computers, you had some comments first? Oh, yeah, he's got to do that.
Tom, do I need now to leave the room for this discussion or not?
Director Compuris, I don't think so. I don't think that you own or are an officer of United Healthcare.
No, I am not.
And the resolution is to grant the insurance contract to United Healthcare.
That's fine. I'm one of the people on their panel, so I just wanted to make sure that we talked.
Let me make sure I understand. When I say on the panel, that means you're a doctor they approve.
Exactly. I'm one of the people that I participate in their panel of doctors that they present to patients.
But you don't own anywhere near a 10% interest of the company.
0.
Then that's not a conflict under our ordinance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Compuris, for giving that disclosure, even though there is not a conflict of interest in you participating in this discussion or weighing in on a vote. But we do appreciate you. As our Chief People Officer, Stacy Witherell, approaches the podium, I'll give a few, as well as Tom Kane with Stevens Insurance, our consultant, we'll give a few comments on behalf of Stacy, myself, and our Chief Administrative Officer, Bruce Moore, As we've taken time and shared with this board, healthcare is a major issue because it deals with our most precious assets, which are the employees of the city of Little Rock. And we are very grateful for each and every employee, and grateful for the services that they provide to our city and its citizens. As we shared, that this is a major component of our budget as we are weighing our budget discussions for a hopeful passage sometime in November. But prior to really moving forward in the budget, we have to understand our healthcare costs for our employees. I think we've shared and went through great detail last few weeks on what we've been weighing as options. And so many of the board members have received a memo from myself and Mr. Moore laying out what we plan to do based on our recommendation and hope for approval from the City Board of Directors. In essence, our decision is to move towards, our decision number one is to continue our relationship with United Healthcare, with also a relationship with CHI St. Vincent to help manage wellness of some capacity that will be discussed at a later date. But the primary from a budgeting standpoint will be United Healthcare and the 15% increase that we've discussed and you've seen in your materials. Secondly, we do express that it is our strong intent to move towards a self-funded model in 2021. We would love to do it today. The reason why we've decided to hold off a year is because we want to build reserves versus going on the expected cost. I believe is expected cost somewhere around $13 million for the city's cost, which is very similar to the same cost with United Healthcare. However, if there was particular health care events that could happen in the year that could take our expected cost with self-funded up to the amount of $18 million or so. And so that's when we discuss having those reserves in amount. And so instead of just going full throttle with the self-funded, we want to prepare for a self-funded model rather than just making a decision. So we want to be very conservative and moving towards that way from a procedural standpoint. And so that is what's before us today as far as our recommendation from myself, Stacey Witherell, and Bruce Moore. And that's initially it. Tom, Stacey, anything to particularly add? Or
Mayor Scott, I think you covered it all. But of course, we'll answer any other questions. Before we go to the questions, and thank you, since we covered it, that's great.
I know Director Hines has had some concerns, and I don't know if this is his question, but he has had some concerns about where we are with the bidding for the pharmacy, and I'll just yield my time to Director Hines for his questions.
Thanks. That is one thing that I share with the mayor this afternoon, is that with pharmacy being 19% of the cost driver, then our outlier.
Oh, sorry. I apologize. Trying to get it right.
And with the pharmacy, the fact that we don't have a pharmacy bid sitting in front of us to go along with this with some hopeful cost savings. So what's our plan for that? Tom, when's that going out? And
so, Director Hines, if the city decides to renew fully insured with United Healthcare, the pharmacy benefit will be provided by United Healthcare.
Okay, so it's all looped in. Okay, so we're not separating that. All right, that's what I wanted some clarity on. The other question I think is more for I guess for Tom and Bruce and the mayor. Since we're talking about having our employees share a portion of the increase, how does this affect our contract negotiations with our unionized labor? Since we have contracts that are in force and there's collective bargaining agreements in those as to this. Or Stacey or Bruce or Mayor.
We can initially start with Stacey, who leads our negotiations.
Right. We are currently in negotiations with the 3 unions, and those agreements are scheduled to expire on 12/31/2019. So it'll be part of the compensation package that gets negotiated with those unions. And, pending an agreement or impasse, we do have a ground rule that we will not discuss ongoing negotiations. until we reach an impasse.
No, I understand that portion of it. My question is our resolution covering our unionized,
Yes.
our union? So this resolution,
Covers all employees and
Okay.
retirees, yes.
okay, so
One plan
you've taken
for
that off
all
of the table
active
as a
employees.
negotiating point. And I'm just, and I'll do this offline because this is not something we need. And I'm asking Tom to how, we've got contracts in place that have some bargaining, that specifically cover this. I don't know how, I'm just asking how we're passing a resolution for future contract when we're still under contract with 3 unions.
And before Tom speaks, Tom, and Director Hines, historically, and Mr. Moore can speak to this, historically, a contract has never precluded that position. We've been able to still pass a budget without a collective bargaining agreement being finalized. So this will be just in the same as any other time. Mr. Moore?
That's correct. We typically, as negotiations for new contracts are going on, and they typically happen in November, December, when things are finalized. So it's been historic that the board has passed a budget before negotiations have been completed. Obviously, in 2 of the contracts that expire at the end of this year, there's specific language that says that the city will pay 100% of those employees' health insurance. So at this point, the recommendation is that for the first time in the history of the city that I'm aware of, that we are going to ask employees to share in the cost of the increase. It's about a $1.2 million increase, and this recommendation would say the city would pick up 50% of that, and the employees would pick up the balance, the other 50%.
Okay.
You want to hear from me?
I sure would like to hear from you because I'm not an attorney.
Director Hines, the policy decision you're making tonight is to go with United Healthcare at the cost of $15 million. The way that it's being anticipated is that the employees of the city will help with making up the 15% increase. If during negotiations, the police, for example, decided they didn't want to do that, but instead of asking for X percent, they would ask for Y percent, which would be effectively doing that, and then that gives them an option. Y'all's decision is really kind of shutting down. The city is going to approach it this way so we can get it underway, and this is what we're going to spend, and we're going to have the money from someplace.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moore and Mr. Carpenter. Director Adcock.
Yes. On the memo that we received this afternoon, and I got mine at 2:30 this afternoon when I came home from city meetings, the second dot down here says it's going to result in various changes in benefits. And I requested a little bit later in the afternoon, about 4:30, a copy of what benefits was being changed. And I don't know if y'all made copies of that, but I've got a few copies here if you'd like to have one. Do you have one for everyone? Thank you. And I found that not only are we going to ask people to pay, we're reducing the benefits in lots of areas. And several of us up here have had some medical bills this year, and we recognize that some of these things on here are a real reduction and would cause some problems for some of the employees. So I would like for us to look at all these benefit changes. And are these in stone, Stacy? Are these some that we can go back and say, no, we don't agree with taking away physical therapy? I went through 3 months of physical therapy, and I can tell you if I had not had that physical therapy, I'd not be sitting here today. So I'm very concerned about when we're reducing what benefits our employees are going to have.
No, ma'am, we do not have the discretion to adjust these benefits. This is the platform that has been proposed by United Healthcare that resulted in the decrease in the renewal from 24 down to 15%. And some of the items, of course, if you have a personal exposure to one of those categories, then it might impact you. But there are some additional benefits through changing the platform as well.
Okay. How much input, Mr. Moore and Mayor, has our staff? Has the city employees seen this at all? Because I think that, they should have a voice in looking at this, particularly if we're asking them to pay for it and then reducing their benefits. I think they should have a voice in this. And I don't think that, as far as I know, that we have not included staff. And Mr. Moore, we used to have a staff committee, and has that committee looked at this, and who serves on that committee? I don't want
Director
names.
Adcock,
I just
we do
want
have
to
a
know.
healthcare task force, and different presentations were made to the healthcare task force on the CIN networks to give them exposure on the proposals that we have received. When we got the 24% increase, that was after we had met, I believe, with the healthcare task force. And then afterwards, when Stevens was able to reduce the renewal down to 15%, and we were given this proposal with Legacy, we have not had an opportunity to go back to them and let them know what the changes are.
Who serves on that task force, Stacy?
The unions are invited to participate in addition to a cross-section of employees through all the departments.
Okay, I'd like to know, I don't care about names, but what departments participate in this? Every department has a person that participates?
Yes. We use them to fulfill our responsibility of sharing that information with our employees on the health insurance. In addition, they also act as our wellness program ambassadors, of getting word out to employees regarding our wellness programs to
And
help
what have they
increase.
done so far to inform the employees of what we're looking at?
Well, at this point, the decision of what program we were going through has only recently been made.
Okay, could I request that in this 2 weeks that we've got, that the city employees be notified of this, so that if they have some concerns or something, that they can have the possibility of coming and talk to us?
We can share this information with the healthcare task force.
Maybe
yes.
on your check, how you have that thing on the outside, maybe that would be a good place to share it with the employees.
Well, and it's not to be confused. I mean, we will have a full communication plan when we go to open enrollment, so employees clearly understand what the changes are going to be once a decision has been.
And that's the reason why,
adopted.
Director Adcock, why we have the healthcare task force in place, is as we were contemplating this decision, they are aware that there were potential changes due to the economic realities that we all face in today's ever-evolving and increasing healthcare costs arena. So that's number one. Then number two, we're not comfortable with sharing something that could be changed. Again, this is a recommendation based on management to present to the board of directors for a decision. And so at the point in time that we have a decision, that's when a mass communication will be communicated.
The only problem is that lots of our employees, when they was hired, the benefit package was one of the reasons they took the job, because we all know that the city doesn't pay as much as the private sector. But when you look at the benefits, the insurance and the benefit packages, that makes it better for some people to take the job with the city. So what do we say to those people that took the job knowing that they had a full benefit package, and now we're coming up with lowering the benefits and charging them?
Well, Director Adcock, every employee knows that depending on the governing body and the budget constraints, those budgets or those salaries change. And unfortunately, I think that's just a sign of the times that when the economy's not doing well or revenue's not coming in, that there are going to be changes to the compensation package, unfortunately.
And I know that a lot of our employees, the $30-something a month is not that much. But we also have another group of employees that $30 a month is quite a bit. And I would have liked to have seen us look at some way that we didn't impact that group of our employees with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Adcock. Director Richardson.
Thank you, Mayor. Tom, last week, we talked about the union negotiation with collective bargaining, and I made notation that we don't have the Black Police Officers Association nor the Black Firefighters Association part of those negotiations. I think the following day I sent you an email. Mayor, I don't know if I copied you, but I know I copied Bruce. What process can we utilize to get them a part of the negotiations? Because not all of them are belong to the unions that are part of the collective bargaining group. So how do we, if it's legal, Lance, I'm not an attorney either, but if it's legal, can we figure out a way to include the Black Police Officers Association and the Black Firefighters in these negotiations?
Director Richardson, the IAFF and the FOP are the recognized bargaining units by this board for the police department and the fire department employees. The unions, as I understand it, have a methodology for interacting with the other employee groups. There's also, I think, there's also a female law enforcement officers union and such. We've only recognized one officially. What I think I was saying last week is that if the board wanted to do more, you would be free to do so, but it would take an official action of the board.
Well, I guess that was the genesis of my question. I think I posed to you what process do we have to utilize? I don't know, would they require an ordinance? A resolution to get that passed in order for those two unions to be a part of the negotiation?
Right, but I do want to caution that changing horses in the middle of a stream is usually not good for the rider, and we are in the middle of negotiations, as I understand it.
But I understand, if I heard Bruce correctly, I said those contracts end at the end of this year, correct?
Right, but they're in the middle of the negotiations for contracts after this year. I mean, the concept, I'm just issuing a caution. This is not a block. The concept of making a significant change in who is or is not the recognized bargaining unit for the city in the middle of negotiations is really an unwise idea. The concept of getting through this negotiation and deciding if you want to do that in the future and then taking action is a very serious policy issue to be addressed by the board.
Well, I guess you and I need to have a sit down, because I think that was the last sentence of my email. What process, I said, whether or not is it legal, and if so, what process do we need to utilize to make that a reality and make that happen? Because not all our police officers, not all our firefighters are a part of both unions. So
that's correct.
That's my concern, is how do we get them at the table?
But the point on that is that all of your police officers and all of your firefighters get the benefit of the contractual concessions that the two bargaining units can pull from the city during these negotiations. So if I'm just going to throw out a number, but if there's a 4% raise for law enforcement, then whether you're a member of FOP or not makes no difference. You get the same raise in steps and all the other things that go with that, because that's the recognized bargaining unit. And the answer to your question is yes, y'all can do it. The caution I'm giving you is you're in the middle of a contractual negotiation, and you're talking about bringing different parties in and hoping that they can figure out not only the contracts, but also how they're going to make the decisions between themselves as to how to deal with it, and do so in a fashion that can meet y'all's budget projections and have another contract in place at the beginning of the year. That's my caution.
Well, I wasn't necessarily saying let's do it right now, during the budgeting session right now, but I was talking about how do we get them to be a part of future negotiations? How do we get them to be a part of the group that does the collective bargaining? Because the assumption is that those two recognized unions are operating on the interests of all the firefighters and all the officers when that may not be the case in some cases.
I understand, and unfortunately, when you go to law school, they tell you about this parade of the imaginary horribles, and the moment I heard you say that in the middle of negotiations, all the imaginary horribles showed up, and I spit them out to you, and for that I apologize.
Well, like Lance said, I accept your apology, but I'm not a lawyer. I just wanted to, that was the genesis of my emails and my questions last week. So you and I can visit some about that, and I can have my personal law school with you.
Vice Mayor Wyatt.
Thank you, Mayor. Our resolution is for $15 million, and looking at the documents that we received, I don't see a number on here that says 15 million. So what is the 15 million for?
And that's just a number of do not exceed. That's language that the city attorney's office requests that we have in there. So that's just to cover the city's contribution towards active employees as well as retiree employees.
Lance is trying to help me over here. I don't know what he's trying to do. Okay, so when you look at the document that was sent to us that talks about the 50-50 contribution, there are some other plans on here, the BIP 2 and BIP 1. I don't know how many employees would be interested in that, but do you have a sheet like this for those BIP plans?
Yes. Well, actually, this would apply whether you're in the base plan or the buy-up plan.
Okay.
The only difference in the buy-up plans versus the base plan would be the co-pays for primary care physician or the specialist, your out-of-pocket expenses versus your deductible.
Okay. And then my last question is preventative care out of network, and under the one proposed, it says not covered. What exactly does that mean?
That means if you choose a primary care physician that is not in the United Healthcare Network for preventive services, it will not be covered. The United Healthcare Network in Arkansas is very inclusive and has just about every primary care physician, so I don't see how anybody could fall out of network and not have that covered.
What if you're a retiree that does not live in the state of Arkansas, you live in Texas or Oklahoma?
So again, United Healthcare is one of the largest national provider networks in the industry, if not the largest. So it provides very extensive coverage across the United States.
Because we ran into that with another.
Yes, we did.
Another situation we got into. Okay, well, that's good. All right, that's what I need to know. Thank you. Am I in charge? Yes, I think you are. Okay, let me see who's next then. Director Hines.
Thank you. Tom, one other question. It occurs to me that if we stick with United Healthcare, there doesn't seem to be any wellness or, I guess, cost containment. And going forward over the next year, if we have another bad year and we don't have a partner in United Healthcare that's going to work on driving our costs down, will that not affect our reinsurance and rates to go self-insured for the following year? And Dean may opine on this. We are on one hand saying we'd like to go to the clinically integrated network to try to curtail some of those and improve our outcomes, but we're sticking on the same horse with no help from United Healthcare, and that I can see for what you guys have showed me.
So our plans are to meet with the clinically integrated network and to discuss services that they could provide to the city and city employees to start implementing some of those strategies before going self-funded.
Okay, so are they going to do them for free?
No, they will not do them for free. So there will be some cost to that. I will say that there are many services that are currently included in the United Healthcare program that the employees can participate in, and so we need to do a better job of communicating what those are.
Okay.
Specifically diabetes management.
I'm just curious because I've seen it through my professional career that having gone with a company that went self-insured. The first year, we let a third-party administrator handle our benefits. They had absolutely no cost containment. It was so bad that we ended up doing it in-house the following year and got a handle on it because there was no incentive. So it just concerns me that I think United Healthcare on one hand has they have a business motive, profit motive, to try to maintain those costs. But on the other hand, if they know they're not going to retain this account next year, it seems kind of like a little bit of a catch-22. But and I know in the past we've done some wellness stuff with physicals and that kind of thing. It just kind of concerns me that we get into another year like we've had last year, and you get 2 years on the books of ever increasing claims that our self-insurance doesn't look as appetizing as it did. So, thank you.
Thank you, Director Hines. Director Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Stacy, I'm sorry I missed the discussion last week. How much currently, like if you have a dependent or two dependents, what do we contribute to that? And how will that change?
Well, the proposal that's been discussed is that the city would only absorb half of the 15% increase for employee coverage only. So that will only impact that family coverage slightly for what the city is going to contribute. So the employee is going to have to pay more for their family coverage, in essence. That's the bottom line.
And I guess, I just want to make sure that I'm really clear on that. So to follow what Director Adcock said, like if I were a full-time city employee and my contribution would now be the $30, but I had 3 dependents on my plan, what would the change be?
Let me find that. It looks like the monthly employee increase would be $117 additional a month for family
For
coverage.
family.
Right.
And I guess,
so it'd go from $459.78 to $576 a month for an annual cost of about $7,000 total.
so as an individual, as Director Adcock said, for some people, $30 is not a significant amount of money. For other people, $30 is a significant. But for many of the people, $100 would be a real significant amount of
And that's
money.
an additional cost that I wrote you. And really, depending on the number of dependents that you had on your family coverage, the city's coverage may not be, the best product for you. And at that point, I would encourage everyone to go out and shop around to see if there is a independent product that would better, serve your needs. Because again, you're only getting the benefit of the legacy plan on the existing co-pays and deductibles. And based upon what your medical needs are, you might be better off going out to the market and finding a product that serves you and your family better.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Wright.
Stacy, I was looking at the employee only and employee family. In state government, they offered several different packages. There was a bronze, a silver, a gold, and then you could have employee and spouse, employee and one child. So, and the price, of course, reflected that. So, United Healthcare is not offering those levels at all to the city?
Yeah, and that's the base, the buy-up 1 and the buy-up 2. So there's actually 3 plans that an employee could pick from. And we've looked at the different tiers for including spouses or not including spouses, and that is something that we're taking under consideration.
So I guess it's not clear. Hopefully it's a little bit clearer to the employees because it's not clear to me. I mean, I'm used to looking at insurance like very clearly, if you add your husband, this is what
Well,
you will
and
pay.
that's the communication piece that will be communicated
That you
to
will have it
employees.
worked out so the
Right.
employees can clearly understand.
Right. We'll
if I
have
have
it-
one child, or if I add family, husband,
Right.
and family.
And that would be a change for what we're currently doing now. Because right now, family coverage would include your spouse and your dependents. And it's not broken out if you just have a spouse versus one dependent or a spouse and a dependent.
Mayor, I know insurance is very, very challenging, and I'm one that has always had to pay for my insurance. I've never had insurance free. So, but I still think, I don't see this as being a good deal. So you're saying people have to go out, probably look at the market and see if there's something better for them.
And I think she's saying, I mean, as you shared, me being someone that's been both in the private sector as well as in the state government, it's definitely a great benefit when employers are able to pay for 100% of your health care. I think those of us who've been in the state government and the private sector understand that that's not necessarily a commonplace or realistic, but even with the current coverage that we're providing compared to the state government and to the private sector, it is very generous. This is something that we've weighed on our mind, but at the end of the day, it gets down to math, and we faced a 24% increase based on our healthcare outcomes, and as Director Compuris has shared, because not only because of healthcare outcomes, but due to a lack of previous years of all of us not managing our healthcare. And so when you have those outcomes, it does predict these indicators, but in the same vein that we know just because of the current healthcare market, healthcare is going to increase anyway. And so what we have to do is make financial decisions, and with this increase, and we knew since this historic from a standpoint that we've always provided 100% care, that we felt that we did not want for our employees to cover all of it by themselves, the full 15%. And so that's the reason why we wanted to take half. And then also, we do have other things that we do have to fund, and because we could have had the decision that we continue on. But that would be additional close to $2 million to the budget. And once you add that, it does take away from different things that you all have shared that you desired for the citizens of Little Rock. So it's a hard decision. It's not something that any of us thought lightly. But again, if this board agrees with this recommendation, it still will be a very, very competitive benefit compared to state government, which is probably the most likeliest benchmark, as well as the private sector.
As long as they get a clear understanding of, because what I'm seeing is not very clear as to the plans. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And what the board is looking at is the policy of those type of details that you're looking for. That's Stacy's job to do, and they'll get a whole detailed packet and be able to sit down with the families and pick out what's best for them and their household. Director Fortson.
In line with part of what you just said, Mayor, I was going to ask Tom, you insure a lot of companies in the private sector. From your experience, what is the general rule regarding payment of premiums by employees in the private sector?
Director Fortson, most private employers charge the employees something to participate in the plan. So very few provide insurance at no cost to the employee. And it varies from industry to industry, but most employees do have to pay in the private sector.
So that is a quite liberal benefit. In line with the comment Stacy made that employees whose premium goes up for the family plan can shop the insurance market, is there a danger there that some of your better risks might find more attractive coverage at a spouse's employer's coverage and leave us with a greater adverse selection after a year or two of that?
Yes, sir, Director. That is always a risk, that you would have adverse selection in the plan.
So the problem we face is not uniquely the city of Little Rocks, though. It's an industry problem of all types of industries in this city.
Yes, sir.
I do believe, Mr. Mayor, that whatever's decided, I think Director Hadcock's suggestion, we do need a very extensive communication dialogue with our employees, because this is a substantial change in what they have been accustomed to. and communicating it in comparison with what goes on in the rest of the world, I think is very important.
Thank you so much, Director Fortson. Director Computers.
Tom and Stacy, let me, we've got a ceiling of $15 million, not to exceed, right? Tell me, are we taking in, is that based on full employment of all the positions that we have, or is there vacancy savings in this built in?
That is assuming full staffing.
So theoretically, given the fact that there always is some flux in there, theoretically, we could be paying less than that. So we're paying per employee, per time period, when you calculate how much we're paying. Is that right?
Yes.
So if someone works 6 months and then leaves, we're not on the hook for the other 6 months for doing that.
That is correct.
Okay. So this is a difference than we've never done this before. Is that correct?
Could you clarify?
We've always done it based on enrollment.
Okay.
Based on enrollment.
Oh, totally.
Okay.
We've always, to answer Director Computers' question, we've always done it based on enrollment. So we pay for a person for 6 months. If they decide to leave the last 6 months, that's a saving.
Correct. The payment to the healthcare company is based upon an active employee or a retiree.
Right.
But our ceiling is based on every place that you have that you could fill an employee being filled for 12 months.
It's a number to be included in the budget that reflects full staffing, full authorized staffing.
That's what I want to make sure we're talking about.
Yes, not actual enrollment.
Right.
Thank you so much, Director Computers. Director Richardson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. If I heard you correctly, we're not voting on this tonight. We're going to recess tonight's meeting and vote on this next week.
Yes, but
in 2 weeks.
we're going to have a question. Yes, tonight is based on a discussion, so we can vote on next.
And I've heard several requests. I heard Joan make reference that she got a memo at 2:30, and she's asked Stacy for some information, some specific information. I heard Stacy say she's agreed to provide that, but we're going to recess tonight's meeting, correct, before we vote on this. So what we're discussing tonight is not relative to a vote on the actual plan, correct?
Well, it's relative to a future vote.
But it's not an approval.
No, we are discussing an agenda item and have decided not to take up the vote until the next scheduled meeting, which is 2 weeks from today.
Got you.
But there will be no vote on this today. Director Hendricks.
Thank you. My comments are always different, but I think that we're here to discuss what's going on, and we've appointed these two individuals to give us directions. And I always like to say at my age, things ain't what they used to be. We have a new mayor, and that's what we have to be cognizant of. I don't expect to do what I did last year or for the last 12 years that I've been up here, where this board has almost usurped or whatever did come before them. And we have a young mayor, and I think that we're going to have to follow suit. Thank you.
Director Adcock.
Yes. Stacy, after working a couple years with police retirement funds and everything, preventative care out of network, and you stated that in Arkansas we have a wonderful network available. But these retirees that are out of state that are looking for preventive care, is there any way to get those doctors into the network?
Tom?
Yes, Director Adcock. So United Healthcare is one of the largest provider networks in the country, and so they have healthcare providers in every market across the entire state. There are some states that are not any willing provider states like Arkansas, but if you look across the country, there is very good access to physicians and hospitals everywhere.
I noticed that under the new plan, that none of their preventive care would be covered. That now it's covered at 25% deductible after deductible. But under the new plan, the legacy plan, none of those services would be covered.
That's if you choose to use an out-of-network provider.
Okay.
If you stay in network, and then it will be covered at 100%.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Adcock. Seeing that we have no other questions from board members, we do have one agenda item card from Mr. Richard Moorhead, President of Local, number 34.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Mr. Moore. My name is Richard Moorhead. I'm president of Little Rock Firefighters Local 34.
Richard, pull up your mic.
Just come down here tonight to get some information about the insurance. We have started negotiations, but really hadn't been a lot of information about the insurance. So hopefully within this 2-week period, we can educate ourselves on what this renewal means to us as a group, an employee group. And it is something new. Mr. Moore was 100% accurate that the board's going to pass a benefit that's going to reduce our current contract, which we don't feel like is really bargaining in good faith. I mean, I understand the open enrollment aspect of it, but it's like a unilateral change before we're right in the middle of our contract negotiations. So maybe in all due respect, maybe we can get a unilateral change. But anyway, we just need the information. We need the math. We need to look at the math. We need to see how many people it affects, what the cost or what the impact is. The benefit changes. I did attend the task force meetings, but they were about the integrated network. They weren't about the benefit changes. So this is the first time I'm seeing the benefit changes, what the actual changes are. So that's what I'd like to add. It is new to be asked as a employee, 32-year employee for the city of Little Rock, the cost, a portion of the cost to be paid by the employee is new. You know, there might be some proposals come forward. You know, they're talking about going out on the market. A family couldn't afford that unless the city paid them a stipend. So if the city's paying $500 a month per employee and they want to go out to the market and the city could pay them a stipend, and then they could go buy their own insurance. So there's no way, my point is there's no way for an employee to go out on the market unless they'll be reducing their benefit by $500 a month if they don't take the health insurance. So there's no way for them to go to the market because they don't have the money. Not unless that there's some kind of way the city's going to supplement the 80 cents on the dollar for that 5 whole 5 or whatever the base plan is. If there could be some kind of agreement that you could take some type of stipend off of that at an agreed upon rate. So that's the reason I'm here tonight. I know it's just informational and just wanted y'all to know that we're moving forward. We've had some pretty good progress with fire management. We just need the information and the math so we can make decisions for our members on this health insurance. So that's why I'm here. Thank you, though.
And Mr. Moorhead, just again, as City Attorney Carpenter has shared, and as well as our City Administrator has shared, is that, and for the board to understand that generally, collective bargaining agreement is not necessarily completed when we're making these type of decisions, but we all are to continue to operate in good faith, and if there's a concession made, it can be made after the fact, but it's historically never done prior to. So I want to make sure the board knows that that is not a change. We can make our decisions, and if we need to make a concession based on the negotiations that we have with our particular unions, that's something that we will enter into. And so again, as we are continuing to be the stewards of our city's dollars, we have to focus on our budget at the time. And if there's any pivots that have to be made after that, we will have done that in the past. And so I want to make sure that's very clear, that we've never completed an agreement before our budget being passed.
Fair enough.
Secondly, for the board, as we're getting ready to move forward with the remaining part of the, thank you, Mr. Moorhead, remaining part of the agenda is for the board. I just want to stress again, this is something that Stacy, Bruce, and myself have thought long and hard about. And we also knew that you got some information on Friday and Saturday, gave you the recommendation today, took time to think about that. That's too quick of a decision to make on something like this, and wanted to give us 2 weeks to really ascertain this type of information. So please feel free to contact myself or Stacy or Bruce if you have any questions. But again, we've thought long and hard about this. We're grateful that Stevens Insurance was able to negotiate the increase from 24% to 15%, even though 15% is still a lot of money, and we had to make that decision to change course. And it's something that we did not want to do, but something that we have to do. And we're seeing this going on across the country as it relates to healthcare costs. But we want to continue to offer these benefits the best way possible and be stewards of our dollars at the same time. And as you are contemplating your decision, hope, and if there were some changes from a financial standpoint, just make sure the board is clear that based on this, it's adding and subtracting. And so if you want to add to, there's somewhere else you have to subtract to balance the budget, as we all are aware. I just want to keep that in mind, that our healthcare cost is a major component of our budget, and that's what we as management is keeping in mind based on some of your requests that you've made to us as it relates to the budget. Director Hendricks.
May we defer the executive meeting of the board position?
Well, it's
I had talked to you earlier. Could we defer that?
We have it next. You want to go to citizen communication before that? Or I'm confused.
I was asking, could that be deferred until next week? No.
No, she's talking about the executive session.
Executive session. It was,
But I think I don't. Let me parliamentarian. Is that possible?
Going into executive session would take a motion anyway. If there's no motion, you wouldn't be able to go into executive session.
I guess the question is, do you not want to discuss that?
no. I'm asking to defer. What do you say I would need to make?
But I'm asking from a timing standpoint, what do we have to do on the appointment? That's my question.
Talking to you.
To the parliamentarian.
I don't know when we got the notice of it. There's a period of time that we've got to act or it's approved.
Right. Director Hines, you had a question?
If you're going to recess the meeting, incidentally,
Yeah,
there's no reason you can't do it.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if we're not having a meeting in 2 weeks anyway on the calendar.
Yeah. We can.
We got 3. Okay. All right.
We can wait
3
on it.
weeks. Okay, that's fine. I was just curious because Director Hendricks had said we had this on as a regular agenda item. She requested executive session to discuss this appointment. So I just didn't understand why the reason for delay.
It's a decision for the board.
So here's what we'll do. We'll have a brief conversation. We'll have a brief conversation, and here's what I want to ask you, parliamentarian. Since we're going to delay this meeting, can this be delayed also?
Yes.
That's all I need to know. Okay. So that being said, we're going to move to citizens communication. Thank you, Mr. Parliamentarian. Director Adcock.
Yes, this is one of those that we don't make the decision. They send it to us. And I think this one is time sensitive, Tom.
It is, Director Adcock, and as I pointed out, I don't know exactly when the city got notice of the nomination by the Metro Housing Alliance. I think it's 40 days. I'm not quite sure, but maybe 60, but.
And I think this is actually a little bit early. I think if we waited 2 weeks, it wouldn't be an issue. But we do make a decision. It's our decision to accept or reject. Mm-hmm. We don't make the appointing decision. It's a self-appointing board, but it cannot. Those members cannot serve unless we accept them, and we can choose to reject them. And then if we did reject, then that self-appointing board would have to give a new appointment. So we do have a decision to make.
Okay.
Yeah. But we do have time, and Thank you, Director Hendricks. Mr. Kerry Muhammad. Minister Kerry Muhammad.
Yes, sir. Good evening. I'm Brother Kerry Muhammad.
And Minister Muhammad, if you would, all those that are represented here with you today that weren't able to sign in at 6 o'clock, if they could stand. We do want to take time to recognize you for coming in. I'm sorry you weren't able to be a part of the process, but wanted to recognize you during that period of time.
Yes, sir.
Minister Muhammad.
Yes, sir. I'm just here, and we are here as concerned citizens on the recent event that happened with our brother Ken Richardson with the police. And, we know that, the scripture says, as it is done to the least of these, my brethren, it is also done unto me. And we know our brother is sitting on the board. And, the incident that happened with the police, it's a big concern in our community. We have been getting reports of harassment by the police, and we wanted the board to address this and see what we can do, to bring this to an end, because it's getting out of hand.
Thank you so much, Mr. Muhammad. We do appreciate you, but you still do have time on your clock.
Yes, sir. Well, I would like to, the board to just, if there's any questions, and I would like to know what we can do to bring this to an end, the police harassment that's going on in our community. So, that's it.
Well, thank you so much. We'll continue on with citizens communication, and we'll visit afterwards as well.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, Minister. Thank you. LaJoy Pearson? Is it Person or Pearson? Person, sorry about that. I do apologize.
Hi, my name is LaJoy, and I'm part of the Promise neighborhood. I also grew up in the program as a kid under Ken Richardson, Mr. Ken, we call him. I was 13 years old. Just to let you know about impact he put in my life growing up in the youth program, which it rubbed off on me because I also continued as an adult to be to help the children in the neighborhood. I was a coach for 15 years and things like that. But if Ken helped us growing up to see things outside of the neighborhood. He took us to plays, camps, fed us. I grew up in a home where my brother was murdered at 19. So my home was a broken home because my mom mentally became disabled and couldn't function, properly as far as parenting goes. So the center was a place for us to go, let our problems out, and just to be kids and things like that. So he took me to my first job, was here. I was the camera operator for the city board. Meetings, I used to be back there, and there was a camera here and a camera there. So that's when I experienced my first time working, and also helped Michael Kett get elected. We used to go around passing flyers and hammering signs and things like that. But needless to say, I just want to say what a great man he is to our community and to our youth. And he's still here for us today. It carries on. It's a lifelong bond and a relationship that he carries with us. And I just appreciate him and Reverend Robson on 12th Street, the community center that brought us in. It was a place to go. Because when you were, say, ages 12, 13, 14, you're in the middle stage where you really can't work, but you just, are out there, So they just gave us a place to go and an avenue. And I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pearson. Mr. Keon Neely.
How you all doing? I'm Keon Neely. I am a
citizen of Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm also the founder of the CURE program, the Kids Are Everything program. And I'm just coming to actually wanted to speak on a lot of things as far as the lack of community funding for like the big homie program and project and other things that's going on in there, which is producing said problems that we have in this city. Besides the poverty, is lack of education. So when you don't have education, we have nothing else. You know what I mean? So I am a product of this city, and it was kind of disturbing to me to watch and read the newspaper to see that a city manager was being treated as Mr. Ken was being treated, because I am a product of his program. And now I have a 501c3, and I'm working daily in my community to try to combat this problem that we have with our police department. That's one of the biggest things that I speak on, is the things with the police department. Not saying they're not doing their job, but we need a better recognition of our city manager. For somebody like him to get treated like that, I can just imagine what would happen to me in a situation like that at night, trying to record, trying to make sure everything's whether it's white, black, yellow, brown, but trying to make sure that a citizen of Little Rock is being treated correctly, and to see that is very disturbing for me, because I'm trying my hardest to fill those shoes he had in our community, because there's nobody in there doing those type of things anymore, and to see Mr. King getting treated like this is very upsetting and disturbing on all type of levels. To see that our police force don't recognize a city manager that's been here in our city I'm 42 years old. I was in this program as a juvenile, 12 years old, with Reverend Robinson and more, his brother here as well. So I'm just trying to figure out, is there something that y'all going to implement here to make sure that these police officers recognize, you might pull up on Mr. Force in there and might not know who he is. Sit him in the back of the car. He might have some type of problem. And now it's just something that needs to be recognized. And I think that something has to be in place for you all safety. I mean, that was I think uncalled for, and definitely need to be recognized somewhere. Thank you all for my time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Neely. Mr. Russ Raycott.
Thank you, Mayor. Little Rock Police Department has had some problems in the last 30 days. We had an incident where a police officer made some inappropriate sexual comments about my 86-year-old mother and tried to hit me in the face with his fist. There's a current internal investigation and a criminal investigation of that officer. There was a black female that was forced to lift up her shirt and to show two white officers that she didn't have a weapon. Didn't call any female officers to come out there. In Ward 6, Director Wright, in my own neighborhood, the police inadvertently went to the wrong house, handcuffed two individuals without telling them what they were there. Then when they found out that they had gotten the wrong house, they left without an apology. Then we had Director Richardson. He's dressed in a suit, is in a car that has the same sticker that every one of you have on the back of your vehicle that identifies that as a city director's car. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He was exercising his prerogative in his own ward with his own constituents and got handcuffed and locked up in a car. Now, I film the police just about every day. I did it today. They wave at me. They call me Mr. Rakup because they've been instructed to call me Mr. Rakup. Now, if they know who I am, they should dadgum well know who every one of you are, and including Director Richardson. The chief has issued him an apology. But we have 51 officers that are on a liar's list that I've published, using records obtained through a Freedom of Information Act from the police department. These are over 50 officers that have issues with credibility. They have been found and suspended for lying, and why they're still on the police department, the police force, is a question that somebody needs to get an answer to. These are officers that cannot testify in court. They're not trust. You have other officers who filed false reports and other who have been willfully misrepresentative. All that's lying. We need to have a citizens review board that looks after this department, and if y'all won't produce one, we'll get one. We'll use the FOI to get all these reports weekly, and we'll publish this information so that the citizens of Little Rock and you guys will know what's going on at LRPD. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Webb?
Hey, good evening, Mayor, City Manager, Mayor, City Directors, and City Staff. I called Director Richardson Thursday. He said, man, do not mention me when you come up here Tuesday. He said, this ain't about me. This is about the larger black community. And I thought that was powerful, right? Because I don't have enough time, but I would give you instances of why this is so damn racist. But I don't have enough time. I would give you individual instances of why this moment right here is very racist. And am I calling you racist? I don't know. I don't know yet. I'm going to hold judgment on that. Let me tell you why. Because every time something happens in the black community, there's silence from this board. Somebody's murdered in the black community, nothing. What happened with Director Richardson? I told Director Richardson, call me back when some of your colleagues call you. He ain't called me back yet. What I find interesting here is that no matter what happens in the black community, nobody up here says a word about it. It's like we don't exist. It's like we don't exist. We don't exist. After we had a meeting here, somebody called y'all racist. I thought, no, I don't think they're racist. I know each of you personally, with the exception of Director Peck. I haven't had the opportunity to get to know her personally. Maybe we can go to I can't even think of it now, but we could sit down and grab some grub together one time. But the issue here is, what are you all willing to do? Because if you say nothing, then you condone it. And each of you have condoned it thus far by your silence. You haven't said one word at all about anything that happens in our community. Not one word. None of you. Every ordinance that's been introduced by Director Richardson or Director Hendricks voted down. I can only think of one ordinance introduced by either one of them that was passed. Director Richardson in 2009, I think it was, passed a symbolic resolution to have a moratorium on foreclosures. Y'all voted for that. That's it. He introduced an ordinance that addressed giving beer preference to youth, to companies that hire youth. You voted against that. Director Henderson introduced residency. You voted against that. Every time they've introduced something to impact the black community, you voted against it. I'm going to hold out judgment on calling y'all racist. I'm going to hold out judgment on that. But it's important I read you something, because I think you need it. I think you need to hear it. I think it's important. It's from your guy, Dr. King. One second. Dr. King said, there comes a time when silence is betrayal. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. In the end, we remember not the words of our enemies, not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. I'm going to read that to you again. We don't remember the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Peace.
Director Richardson?
No, my light was from something earlier. I think because this is a personnel issue, it may not be an appropriate time for me to have any comments on that, other than I want to thank the brothers and sisters, particularly some of my former students who grew up in a time, Mayor, when this was one of the roughest places in America to come up, and to see them grow up to have a positive transition to adulthood. It warms my heart to know they're doing what I was doing back in 93 and 94 and 95, and recognize the fact that me, along with my brother who just stepped out, we were out there in the midst of a lot of conflicts where we got shot at a few times, and a couple of guys who worked for me said we're not getting paid enough to do this, but we weren't doing it for pay. We were doing it as an acknowledgement that there needs to be some work done to help some of our young black males and some young black females in our community. And we did that without expectation of acknowledgement, recognition, or compensation. So, Mayor, that's all I want to say on that. It's a personnel matter. I don't think I say anything about that particular incident other than I was offended and insulted. Tom, if I'm allowed to say that. And I will be, Mayor, meeting with you and the chief. I think shortly I did meet with the chief. I had a scheduled meeting with the chief the day before that happened, and he did issue an apology.
Director Hendricks.
Thank you. I'm just amazed at what, I think it was someone that said that, why aren't we saying something? And I said to Ken, you know, if they had put me in a car, all of you would have known. You better believe that. And then I would have tried to find out where did that cop live. But we, you know, it's just terrible that we are silent. Are we brothers and sisters? What are we? I don't understand it. So, Mayor, I'm asking, requesting of you, and perhaps Tom, to really look into this. Who was this cop? Does he? And you know, my issue has been they should live in this city. And
Mayor.
Most of your cops are in the black neighborhood. Of course, you got a lot of them down there at the River Market taking care of their people, okay? And I'm not a racist. I love black folks and I love white folks. I used to babysit white kids. And it's one young lady, I just can't remember her name, but I think I have said to Comparis, she was a nurse, a white female. I kept her children for a long time. You probably, if I could remember her name, but I grew up around raising white kids. So I'm accustomed to white people, but we need to communicate more to each other. And I'm asking the mayor to get with the chief and find out who this boy is. I'm sure he was a boy that arrested Attorney Richardson. And I was really curious as to whether Richardson had talked to you about this. And why am I the spokesman? You know, why don't some of the rest of you all say something? Maybe you'll live as long as I have. I'll be 90 my next birthday.
Director Wright.
Thank you. Mayor, you and I did speak about this,
Wait
and
just a
Tom, I
second.
realize we got to be careful.
What's even worse than that?
Okay.
I mean, in all honesty, this issue is being looked into.
Okay.
A complaint has been made. An investigation is occurring. 2 years ago, our office made it quite clear, you cannot stop somebody from using a cell phone to take pictures of an area. The courts that govern Arkansas made that very clear in Pine Bluff with Mr. Walker, and we went through it again, and I thought the word was out there again. So I'm in a situation where I've read something in the newspaper, I have not seen anything official, and we can't say anything until that's done, because we not only have an employee, but we've got an employee that we have given certain rights to, and we've got to go through that process. And that's not silence, Robert. That's the very justice that Dr. King asked us to bring.
Thank you.
If you need to press your light. Press your light. If you had another comment. Director Richardson.
Move to adjourn, Mayor.
There's a motion second. Oh, no. Move to recess.
I'm sorry. Move to recess. I'm sorry.
There's a motion second to
2
move.
weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. There's a motion and second to recess until our next scheduled meeting. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passed to recess.